Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would love to give a big round of applause to the band. These are great friends of Bob's who have joined together to help us celebrate him today. Sheldon Corbett, Glenn Enns, Heidi Monroe, Bruce Wilkinen, and Ross Nicofore. Thank you. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ada Pally, and I'll be your MC today. Like many of you, Bob had a profound influence on me and my path in life. It's an influence that I'll forever be grateful for, and I hope I have the opportunity to pay it forward in my lifetime. He was a friend, a mentor, a boss, and a father figure to me for the last 20 years. After working for him at the Polo Club, house sitting, babysitting, dog sitting. Along the way, like it or not, MJ too became a great mentor and friend, and Portia and JP like a brother and sister until they grew up and just became great friends. As one of the many strays Bob brought into the house, I'll always be grateful for the warm, welcome embrace of the Crowe family, especially for MJ's willingness to put up with Bob's shenanigans. One of many lessons that I learned from the two of them in their relationship is it's just so much easier to go along with what the other person decides to do. Their steadfast dedication and love to each other was an incredible example, and their unparalleled approach to parenting has been an incredible inspiration over the years. Thank you for raising the bar for me, the worlds that you guys have opened, and the support that you've given when you didn't have to, and most of all, for trusting me to stand here today. Certainly one of Bob's greatest gifts was his ability to see potential in something that nobody else could. And then he would take that potential and with a very sly smile, gracefully and adeptly turn it into something profound, useful, and certainly very meaningful. This was key to his success in business, and without a doubt, one of the many reasons so many of us are here to honor him today. The fact that he saw something in us that perhaps we could not see in ourselves, planted seeds of courage, and then did everything in his power to help us succeed. Sometimes this path clearing meant strong words of advice. Personally, I benefited and often cried as a result of this good advice. And some very strong words of advice over the last 20 years. Some of these that we're also very familiar with is, don't take yourself so fucking seriously. Onward and upward, you deserve better. The most recent great advice that I received from him was, try to do it gracefully. Something I'm not always so good at. But always this commitment and confidence that we will figure it out. With his confidence, he would leave no room for doubt. The advice was going to be good, and we would figure it out. And he was always right. He was always steadfast in his faith that we can and will be great, kind, loving, and most of all, resilient citizens. We must carry his faith in us with us always, even though his words of encouragement and guiding hand are no longer a phone call away. In the moments of deep grief or doubt or despair, ask yourself, who would you be had Bob not been a part of your life? As your mentor, as your friend, as a colleague, as a brother, husband, as a father. Think of the gifts that you received from Bob, the gifts of opportunity, the gift of perspective, of thick skin, of encouragement, of kindness and a guiding hand, the gift of joy, of laughter, of love, an appreciation for a fast horse or a good dog, perfect ski day, a good book, a great movie, the perfect soundtrack, or an intangible destination. Take whatever he is that he gave you along the way and hold it in your heart. Serve it a cup of tea. Feed it a Dorito. Take it for a fast drive with the top down or a slow dance to its favorite song. Or if it suits you, cover it in alcohol and throw it a party. Second only to his unique way of caring for everyone, which was incredible. I do not know how he found the time, was Bob's incredible joie de vivre. Some of my most joyful moments in life were with or because of Bob. And it's not only these moments that I will forever cherish, but the lesson that I learned behind them, that he always iterated by example, which was to choose joy. There are going to be some tears today, obviously, but Bob wouldn't want us here sad. He would want us to support each other, to laugh, to play, and to choose joy. We're going to keep the program really tight today. I have a few details for you. First and foremost, we are live streaming this event, so hi everybody. We also have 2 open mic sessions that you're welcome to participate in. If you would like to share here via live stream today, please find me next to the stage during one of the musical interludes, and I will cue you up. If you don't feel comfortable sharing in front of everybody today, we also have a video booth on this side behind the black curtain, where we'd really appreciate you sharing your memories and stories of Bob so that they can be digested at a quieter time. I think that's it for now. We're going to kick things off with Ken Crowe and the Lord's Prayer. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all of you taking the time to show up to celebrate the life of my brother, who God blessed me with for 62 years. So for those of you who are able, if you wouldn't mind standing, and we'll just open with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the power, the kingdom, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. And next up, Portia Crowe is going to come up and share the eulogy with us.
That's good. All right. We maybe should have compared notes, Ada. I guess we knew the same guy. All right, everyone can hear me okay? Great. So thank you, everyone, for coming together to celebrate the life, adventures, and accomplishments of my father, Bob Crowe, Bobby G. He was an exceptional husband, father, beau-fils, brother, uncle, boss, partner, and friend. Some of you have traveled very far, and I know he would be deeply touched to see so many faces here today. I would also like to give a special thanks to John and Robin Sparks, who've been absolute rocks for my family the past few weeks, despite grieving the loss of their best friend too. Before Dad became the man of the world that we all knew, he was a small town boy born in Rosthern, Saskatchewan. His family moved to Saskatoon when he was 8, and his father, George, enrolled in law school. They would later open their own law firm, Crowe & Crowe, together. Dad met my mom, Mary Jane, fittingly, at a Liberal Party convention in 1984. They eloped on New Year's Eve the following year, kicking off 32 beautiful years of marriage. He could not have chosen a stronger, more supportive, nor more loving wife. My dad lost his own father at a young age when he was 34 and George was 64. I believe that shaped the man and the father he would become. People describe my dad as being a sunny person with an amazing spark. They use words like warm, thoughtful, and of course, witty. A couple of years ago, Dad and I both took a Myers-Briggs personality test. I was described as the commander, in other words, bossy. Dad was the entertainer. If anyone is to be found spontaneously breaking into song and dance, it is this personality type, his results read. They get caught up in the excitement of the moment and want everyone else to feel that way too. From grooming and outfits to a well-appointed home, these personalities have an eye for fashion. Dad thought that was great. But it wasn't all song and dance and panache. It went on. No other personality type is as generous with their time and energy when it comes to encouraging others, and no other personality type does it with such irresistible style. Dad gave his whole self to others. He had time for so many people and always did what he could to lighten their load. He made everyone he spoke to feel valued and important. This was the case in his parenting as well as in his friendships. He took an interest in everything JP and I did. When we were young, he picked up the instruments we were learning, violin and cello, and learned along with us. When JP found his passion in electronic music, Dad was right there with him. Not many 60-year-old guys know what hard noise music is, but Dad sure did. And he seemed to know everything. I'm sure all fathers seem that way to their little girls, but increasingly, my family and I are realizing just how many people turn to him for advice and support. He was a great mentor, and I know I'm not the only person who regularly called him for career guidance, though I am probably the only person he would imitate with Yeti noises when I called in a fever pitch. But it's a comfort to know how many lives he touched in that way. The more people he left a mark on, the better. That is how his memory will live on. And of course, while Dad often carried a heavy load, he had his vices too, like Twitter, or a good movie, the joy of a great book, or an old-fashioned, Saturday mornings watching Westerns, or Sunday mornings with Fareed Zakaria. As for me, my dad and I spoke all the time, but one of our final long conversations was about the Me Too social movement and women's rights. Don't get me wrong, Dad was always a strong advocate of women's empowerment, but we disagreed on some of the issues, and I was so upset about it that we scheduled a call and set aside time to hash it out over the phone. We spoke for 2 hours, or rather, Dad humbly listened for 2 hours. He made every effort to better understand the world from my perspective, and while he was certainly no pushover, he had no problem admitting he could be wrong. Now, whatever your thoughts on this particular topic, you have to agree this showed my dad's open-mindedness. He recognized this was an important issue to me, so he took it seriously too. He proved that everyone can learn, change, and continue to progress, even, as he would say, old dudes like himself. And it showed how much he believed in dignity for all. I could recite a long list of Dad's accomplishments in politics, in law, in parenting, but in my view, one of his greatest achievements was successfully navigating a career change in his 40s. He didn't just dream it, he went for it and dazzled the industry. You know, Dad was an artist in so many ways, a gifted writer, but also a great storyteller in person. Anyone who's ever asked him what he was working on knew that. He was a musician and loved singing and playing piano and guitar. I know many of you, including my cousins, will have memories of bouncing on his knee at the piano as children. He was a talented actor, photographer, and we all knew he was a dancer. So when I was younger, I used to wonder why he didn't pursue a career in the arts. Then I got to see how much he loved his work at Angel and Bamboo. What else can I tell you about Dad? He was fun. A few months ago, I found myself chatting in a London pub with a friend of my parents I hadn't seen in years. When he realized who I was, the friend's first reaction was, "Oh, you're Bob Crowe's daughter. You know, your dad throws a great party." Dad was cool. There's no other way to put it. We both knew he was cooler than me. He was the best dresser I knew. He listened to cool music, and I'm pretty sure my friends genuinely preferred hanging out with him. 10,000 people around the world tuned into his thoughts and opinions on social media, including all my coworkers in London and New York who were obsessed with him. How could anyone not be in love with Bob Crowe? He proved every moment of every day that you didn't have to live in a cosmopolitan metropolis to be cultured, classy, refined. Above all else, my dad was a great friend to so many. I'm thankful I got in 10 years of adult friendship with him, but some of you have had a lot more, and I look forward to hearing all your stories. Many of my own favorite stories with my dad are from our travels together. Over the years, he and I met up in Amsterdam, Berlin, London, New York, Montreal, Toronto, and of course, Cairo. Dad was so beloved by everyone he met that Mohammed Karim, a friend he'd made at the Cannes Film Festival, who turned out to be one of the biggest television stars in the Arabic world, invited us to Egypt and gave us what felt like a royal tour. And believe me, everywhere we went, Dad was the star of the show. More recently, last winter, he and I road tripped from New York to Vermont for a weekend of skiing. Just us, and hours of stories and sing-alongs, political debates, and après-ski beers. It was so much damn fun. With these memories, and with our pages of emails, BBMs, WhatsApp messages, what will stay with me is how lucky I was to consider him a friend. My dad taught my brother and I so much, my brother and me so much, it would be impossible to sum up his impact on our lives here. But I recently found, as I perused our email exchanges, a quote by Nathaniel Hawthorne he sent me a couple of months ago. "Human nature will not flourish any more than a potato if it be planted and replanted for too long a series of generations in the same worn-out soil. My children have had other birthplaces, and so far as their fortunes may be within my control, shall strike their roots into unaccustomed earth." Dad was proud of JP and me, and was excited for us to set out on our own paths. I'm so glad he was able to see us do that, and especially to have seen JP graduate last month. He gave us roots, but he also gave us wings. We will each of us find ways to remember my father and keep his spirit alive. For some of you, it might be seeing a musical, going on a trail ride, or playing a few chukkers in his memory, enjoying a quiet cup of tea or a chai latte from Starbucks, taking a road trip, or pouring a Bob's Hawaiian Vacation, which, by the way, will be served at the bar. For me, I will remember Dad in reading, both the things he's written and the books that he's read, and in writing. Everything I write is influenced by him. Sometimes I realize even the phrases I use were at one point written by him. Yes, one of Dad's first loves was English literature, and among his favorite authors was, of course, Shakespeare. So I hope you all won't mind my ending on the words from the bard himself. "Like as the waves make towards the pebbled shore, so do our minutes hasten to their end, each changing place with that which goes before. In sequent toil all forwards do contend. Nativity, once in the main of light, crawls to maturity, wherewith, being crowned, crooked eclipses 'gainst his glory fight, and time that gave doth now his gift confound. Time doth transfix the flourish set on youth, and delves the parallels in beauty's brow, feeds on the rarities of nature's truth, and nothing stands but for his scythe to mow. And yet, to times in hope my verse shall stand, praising thy worth despite his cruel hand." Thank you, Dad, for everything you've given us. As concludes our favorite musical, Cabaret, Auf Wiedersehen, à bientôt.
this life feels. Look around at the friends that I used to turn to pull me through. Looking into their eyes, I see them running too. Running on empty, running on, running blind, running into the sun, but I'm running behind. Honey, you really tempt me, the way you look so kind. I'd love to stick around, but I'm running behind. Running on, you know I don't even know what I'm hoping to find. Running blind, running into the sun, but I'm running behind.
You guys sound great. All right, so we're going to start our first open mic session of the afternoon. We're going to kick it off with Tony Testego. I'm just going to plant myself over there, and if any of you guys want to queue yourself up for this session or the next, please just flag me. Awesome. Thanks, Tony.
Hello, everybody. Heidi and Glenn and Ross and Sheldon is beautiful. Thank you for that song. Portia, just, there's no words for that. Eulogy is beautiful. So well said. And Ada, too, so you guys are great. Mary Jane and JP and family and all these guests. Yeah, Mary Jane and Portia, JP asked me to open this up. So I said I'd come up for the challenge. My name is Tony Testego. I've had a long relationship with Bob going back to the Liberal years. There's many of you here today. I think I met him during one of Pierre Trudeau's campaigns. Anyway, this goes back a long time. I have a message here first to read. It's from a gentleman in the industry who wanted me to read this, so I'll start with this. Bob was a leader, indeed a giant in the industry, and will be greatly missed. On behalf of the programming team of Vision TV, I'd like to say it was a great pleasure working with him and Angel Entertainment to bring some compelling and original Canadian stories. And this is a message from Mark Prashoon, former executive director of SAS Film, and at the time formerly with Vision Network. And he wanted to pass this message along. And I know there's more in the room here that will likely be doing the same today. Valerie Creighton and Suzanne and quite a few folks, and Richard up from Regina. So hope you guys can come up to the mic. All right, so I'll be brief. But, first off, I just want to let everybody know that I'm actually still mad at Bob, for real. Yeah, well, this is one little story that I think him and Wally would allow me to tell. So we go to the Banff World Festival to do business, actually, and it's actually a pretty intense week, and it's good to kind of blow some steam off. Well, anyway, Bob and Wally, wherever he is, still have to get him for this, they tempted me to try Bob's Hawaiian. At the time, that's what it was called. And it was diabolical, and I think Bob and Wally cooked it up. And their plan ultimately altered my Banff festival. Because I obliged, and Bob with his pearl whites handed me one after another, and he quite enjoyed as I swallowed them all down, and I gladly accepted. Anyway, the next day I missed every meeting. Thanks to Bob and Wally. And every one of them had been pre-booked for like months in advance. So anyhow, Bob heard this, and we were at a SAS Film mixer. I think Suzanne and Valerie were there, and Bob walked up to me kind of red-faced, and he said, Tony, sorry about your missed meetings, and actually in honor of you, Wally and I have both decided that we're going to rename your drink. It's now officially called Tony's Missed Meetings Banff Special. So I'll be toasting him at the end of that. As I mentioned, our friendship spanned many years, and we collaborated in the production of 2 documentaries. And as Portia outlined, Bob was really one for a good story. And he certainly indulged in what I was doing, and I was very grateful for that. And I noticed that his ears lit up when it was a project that often depicted the best of humanity in the face of adversity. And in my case, I've got a bit of a legacy with war documentaries, and Bob jumped right in and supported me through the production of every one of those. And I was really grateful for that. We also were business partners for 11 years on a travel program called City Profile Show. And as Portia outlined, he was a mentor to me through that experience. So it's all been a great privilege. With all that said, he used to come and take me for long walks along the river, and he felt that I needed them for some reason. And he would bring some kind of concoction that was it had salad in it, that's all I know, and insisted that we eat it. So I went along with it, and we went for our business walks, and it seemed like a good thing to do. But the one time was really special. It was a fall day, and he was unusually ecstatic. He was kind of bouncy, and he was kind of walking in front of me and beaming. And he told me the universe had favored him. I said, I think it was just God's good grace. And he spoke of his amazing life partner and wife, Mary Jane, her thriving practice. He talked about Portia in her international work as far as journalism. JP, John Patrick, pursuing a career in film. Just amazing. He talked about the Saskatoon Local on Demand that he had worked with Ken and Diane, and he wanted to honor them and make that a success. Talked about his business partnership with Wally, which truly was a very effective and good one. He spoke about his Broadway building. I don't know, hopefully all you've seen that, but the design and function and style in that is all Bob. He talked about another successful motion picture premiere, which Big Muddy, and he had a premiere in LA, and at this point, he's literally bouncing. And then he felt his team at Angel and Bamboo were the best he could ever ask for. He felt they were all loyal, passionate, and hardworking. And he's just ecstatic about it, and I just saw him beaming with pride, and I got to witness that. And it was amazing, and I was really happy for him. So that was a blessed walk that day, and I felt a lot of pride for him and a lot of pride for the fact that I had a caring friend in him, and a business partner and a colleague. And in many ways, to me, he became like a big brother. So as this shock happened, I got looking at my emails and messages. I didn't do much Twitter, but his final Facebook message that we had, I had mentioned in the message, I believe it was a picture with him and Portia, and I called him a gentleman and a scholar. He answered, "We all strive to be both, don't we, Tony?" And then the very last message I got from him on my text was pretty special. And he said, "Tony, thinking of you today and all you're doing to keep memories alive for all the veterans." And that was during the air show in 2017 that he sent me that text. And yeah, as busy a man as he was, it was amazing. He took the time to send me that text. That's my last text message from him. So nice to be talking about Bob's Hawaiian. I'm going to call it Tony's Missed Meetings for today. And I know you all don't have your drinks, but I'm just doing a toast to truly a gentleman and a scholar. And as his friend John Sparks said, a prince. So this is to my friend Bob. Thank you. The mic is open.
Shelley, are you ready to go next? I'm not sure where you are. There you are.
Okay, I have to make sure that you can hear. Okay. My name's Shelley Leffler, and before I go any further, I need to hats off to the young women that have spoken so far today. Ada, boy, the friendship and the mentorship that you spoke of. I know you had Bob smiling, and Portia, he's still sitting back there and saying, wow, that's my girl. And I'm going to take one of the questions that you posed in your presentation. Who couldn't love Bob Crowe? Okay, so I met him, grade 9, and that was the question on my brain as I did meet him. I wish you could have seen him, and then maybe you do remember. He was a styling, elegant, young man. He had this confidence all of his own. He was constricted by the school uniform, there's no doubt, but he was saved by that lightly wavy hair and it being 1969, that Beach Boy-esque style. Who could not love Bob Crowe? He was a man that kept himself busy throughout high school, always involved in arts and music and student leadership, student council. It was no surprise that years later, he was voted our class valedictorian, and he won the leadership award that year. I remember back to Bob, and one of the things that he had was this way of being friends with absolutely everybody, and that's what I heard from Ada and Portia's comments. And even back then, grade 9, 10, 11, walking through the halls of Holy Cross High School, he would joke with everybody. He would chide with other people down the hallways. In the classroom, he held court, if you will, with Andy Ratushniak, a good friend, and they were always making people laugh, smile. It was a good thing. He put us at ease. Over the years, Bob kept up with his pursuits, his passion in the arts and in film. He was serving on boards and serving on committees, and that's where our paths crossed again in the world of jazz. At one point, Bob was the president of the Saskatoon Jazz Society, and I think at that time, he was the youngest president. We used to meet, and we, as two old Saskatoon friends, would talk about jazz in Saskatoon. And I remember one time when we were in the transition from the old basement, and I met with Bob, looking to him for advice, hoping for maybe a little bit of a sponsorship, a business partnership. And I proposed this idea to him, and he looked at me smiling and said, Shelley, I've always wanted to own a jazz club. Bob Crowe. In paying tribute to him, I looked back at his valedictorian message. And I got to tell you, I found some strength in his words, in his own words of 1973, if you'll allow me. Bob wrote and spoke. In my mind, I can see nothing but a bright future. The past weeks have shown me the many people who have laid claim to the title friend. We have been drawn together over the years in moments of defeat, in times of personal trauma, and we've known the joy of making tears of loneliness and sorrow turn into tears of happiness. Not once in my years have I felt alone. Thank you, my friend Bob, for being such a classy, nice guy. We were lucky, and you're going to be missed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shelley. That was beautiful. Ken, would you like to take the stage next?
Well, I'm reluctant actually to come up here because of my obvious gifts do not fall in this area, but I cannot not get up here and just share about my brother, Bob. And thanks so much, Portia, for those wonderful words, and Shelley and Tony. But there are certain life events, that impact us emotionally and so powerfully that we never forget where we were or what we were doing when we first became aware of them. And I know in my life, when John F. Kennedy was assassinated, I remember being a 10-year-old fifth grade student just on my way back to Bishop Murray School here in Saskatoon. And I remember when a space shuttle disintegrated, and I was doing a little bit of training in the neonatal intensive care unit at Royal University Hospital as a resident, and the world seemed to come to a quick halt temporarily. And then, of course, most of us will remember 9/11, exactly what we were doing. And I can even remember the patient's room I was in when that second plane hit the World Trade Center, and we knew that something terrible was happening. But on December the 15th, I got a phone call from Sue, and all those other things sort of paled in comparison, and everything was just kind of a fog for a while. I was actually driving home at the time, and Sue said, "You might want to pull over," but I was almost home, so I was there in the driveway, and I remember we talked for a little while. Then I got out of the car and went in the house, and Terry was out of town just for a few hours, and so I was by myself, and I thought, what do I do? And so I got down on my knees, and I just thanked God for a brother like Bob that, as I mentioned, I'd been blessed with for 62 years. It's really been hard to wrap my mind around that over the last several weeks, and the fact that I won't see Bob again, maybe this side of heaven, I guess. And I can't imagine what it must be like for Mary Jane and JP and Portia, and I want you to know we've been praying daily for you, and I'm trusting that and knowing that God is surrounding you by all these wonderful people to support you. But the next thing that happened was just this flood of memories of all those years together, and I'm not going to tell you all these things. I might share a few of them, on that private video, and because there were a lot of them. Bob was, as most of you know, he was very much gifted in the entertainment field, in the arts, and probably I was about the most opposite that you could get. About the only thing I could do was run track and play football a little bit, and we used to have this very friendly competition and joking between each other because of our differences, But I honestly cannot remember us ever having a fight. Now, my sister Lori apparently remembers something that I don't remember. She says there was one time as little kids we were fighting so hard that she actually got down on her knees and she started to pray for us. But I don't even remember that. I can honestly say that Bob and I got along famously. The only regret I have is that we didn't spend more time together. And in this last 23 years, we were separated by a lot of miles. But I've got those memories. Bob loved to laugh. And I probably didn't laugh as much as him. I might have been maybe a little more serious, but we used to laugh at each other a lot in a friendly, brotherly sort of way. And I remember this one time, I was giving him a water ski. I was driving the boat, and he was skiing, and brought him in pretty close to the shore. We always like to just kind of look pretty cool, coming up to the shore and then stepping out of the skis, looking. But Bob, this one time, just came a little bit too fast and a little bit too close to the shore, and he came flying out of the skis, and his legs could hardly run fast enough to keep himself from planting on the muddy soil that he was running across, and eventually his legs could not keep up, and he went flying face first into the shore. And once I realized that he hadn't killed himself, I started laughing, and it was probably the hardest I've ever laughed, and I'm told that my laughter carried across the entire lake. And And the only time I've ever heard laughter that was any louder than that was about 15 minutes later when I got on the skis. And I don't know what happened, because I was sure that I was not going to do anything of the sort. But somehow, God's got a sense of humor, I guess. I came up and did exactly the same thing and went flying out of my skis and slid into the shore. And that laughter of Bob's, I'll never forget it. He just went on and on and on. A lot of wonderful memories. There was a time a number of years ago where Bob was in New Orleans for something to do with his films, and Terry and I were also there for a medical conference, and so our visits coincided. So we said, well, let's get together for a good meal, and we did. It was right near the French Quarter, and then Bob, he likes to make everything a special occasion if he can. And so he said, Ken, I've got these 2 cigars, and I'd kind of like it if we could each smoke a cigar and walk down Bourbon Street, from one end to the other. And I said, oh, we can do that. That sounds like a fun time. So when we left the restaurant, that's exactly what we did, only he obviously smokes a few more cigars than I have, and I made it about halfway down that street, and all of a sudden became incredibly lightheaded and weak and dizzy, and I literally had to stop, put out the cigar, and say, Bob, I can't do this anymore. I can't go any further. And that brought a smile and a more than a little chuckle to his face. But I did have, as people were talking, there's been a common theme about the encouragement that Bob was to so many, his generosity. And it's interesting because I have this short little story that I'd heard years ago. It takes about 1 minute, and I just wanted to share that with you because to me, anyways, it describes my brother. It's called The Giving Tree. And it says, when the boy was young, he swung from the tree's branches, and he ate the tree's fruit, and he slept in the shade of the tree's branches. But as he grew up, he spent less and less time with the tree. Come on, let's play, said the tree. But the young man was interested now only in money. Then take all my apples and sell them, said the tree. The man did, and the tree was happy. He didn't return for a long time, but the tree smiled one day when he passed by. Come on, let's play. But the man, older and tired of the world, wanted to get away from it all. Well, cut me down, said the tree. Take my trunk and make a boat, and you can sail away. And the man did, and the tree was happy. So many seasons passed, and the tree waited. Finally, the man returned, too old to play or to pursue riches, or sail the seas. I have a pretty good stump left, said the tree. Why don't you sit down here and rest? And the man did, and the tree was happy. And I guess this little story reminds me that I need to be grateful for the people in my life who have been generous, giving trees. My brother Bob was one of those for me. I think he was a much better brother to me than I was to him. And I suspect for many of you, he's been the same way. Someone who gives of himself that we might grow and accomplish our goals and find wholeness and satisfaction. And so to me, that's the legacy that my brother left to me. And I would like to just say that I take great comfort in knowing that he lived his life that way, because it shows me that he obviously was touched by the Master's hand, and it gives me great hope and comfort that I'll see him again. And one other thing, 13 days ago, I was in New Orleans again. This time it was for the Alabama-Clemson college football playoff game. And I just want Bob to know that I got myself a big cigar. And this time, I walked all the way down Bourbon Street, finished the whole darn cigar. And so I'm sure he'd be proud of me. My only regret is that he wasn't there to physically to walk that street with me. But I suspect the next time we walk a street together, they might be Gold Streets. Thank you.
And Pat Rooney, would you like to close out this section of open mic? There he is.
It's so impressive to see so many people out here today, but of course I'm not surprised at all. I've been Bob's friend for over 40 years. We met in law school. And, in a sense, we come from similar backgrounds. I grew up in Humboldt, Saskatchewan, and Bob come from Rostern originally. But if you knew us back then, you'd say that's pretty much it. I was a hockey player. I didn't have grace. I didn't have elegance. I didn't dress like Bob did. But we became friends in law school, and Bob and my sister Jane were very close friends as well over the years. And the three of us spent a lot of time together. And everybody goes in a different path. And sometimes the connecting tissue gets misplaced or becomes less visible. But it's still there. And I ended up spending a lot of my life traveling and being further away. So I didn't, like Ken, I didn't see Bob as much as I'd like to. But, we had some really key moments together. I was working in Toronto, and Bob was in Calgary, I think, at the time. This is 34 years ago. We decided we got to go on holiday together. So we say, well, where are we going to go? Where are the women? And so we went to Club Med together. And I met my wife there. And we're still married, even though at the time we met some of her friends question her judgment. But Bob was there, and we've got all these great pictures, and Susan tells me, especially when she's trying to get one over on me, I like Bob better. But as the years went by, we'd get together, and just a few years ago we went skiing, and of course I just had knee surgery, and it was kind of like the 60 type crowd as opposed to the 25-year-old kamikazes. But it reminds me of something about Bob. I mean, there's so many things that are special about him, and I've heard a lot of things that I didn't know, given his career. And so as I'm sitting there and I get these abstract thoughts, it was like Bob's a giant puzzle with all of these unique pieces that make him up. And all of us are aware of some or many, but not all of them. And in the context of coming together and sharing our stories, we'll get all of those pieces in place, and through the videos and otherwise. and give the family the gift of seeing Bob from all the vantage points that we're all providing. And in my case, I want to tell just one little story here, because to me, it's something that jumped out at me. When, as Ken said, when a major event comes, things hit you. And it's not some sort of conscious choice, oh, I'll pick this memory or I'll pick that memory. Something just flashes on the screen to you. And in this case, it was back when we were just finished law school and we were both living in Calgary. And, we'd go skiing. It was great fun. I wasn't that great a skier, but I was crazy. So straight down the hill and maybe into the trees. Bob, on the other hand, was very precise, very controlled, and very nervous. And as you know, Bob excels at everything he does. So this really didn't fit for him. But every time we talked about athleticism, he'd talk about Ken. And he always admired you, Ken, for all your athletic accomplishments. And so the one day he comes over to my place, he says, I've got to be able to keep up with you other guys. So I'm taking lessons at, I think it was called Paskapoo or something in Calgary at the time. And I said, that's fantastic, Bob. So he goes and he takes the lessons, and, it was 5 days or something, 5 evenings. And I'm at home at my apartment on a Friday night or whatever, and maybe it was a Thursday. It couldn't have been a Friday. And somebody comes knocking on the door, smashing on the door. And I go, what the hell is going on? And it's Bob. And he'd obviously had a couple of drinks. And he was manic. I mean, he was just out of control. I'm going, what is going on? He said, I won. I said, what did you win? He said, all the people in the program ended up having a race at the end, and I won. And he's on my cheap sofa hide-a-bed, jumping up and down like he's 6. And it blew me away. But after that, the next time we went skiing, it was like, who is this guy? Because now he was going as fast as we were, but with the elegance and grace of a Baryshnikov. It was astounding, amazing. But I wanted to leave everybody with the piece of the puzzle, or my piece of the puzzle for Bob, is Bob the athlete. Because he never gave himself permission to see himself as an athlete. And I saw that. He played polo, which is a very difficult sport. I went water skiing with him once, and he was mesmerizing. And then he became an outstanding downhill skier. So, the little piece of the puzzle is Bob the athlete. I'm so happy to be here. For MJ, Portia, and JP. And I cannot stand up here without saying thank you to John and Robin. To have friends like that for you guys is just an incredible thing. And I know how happy Bob is that you're there for him. As I said, I had more geographical distance over the years, and our connections were a little more sporadic. But in the last few weeks, I've really felt Bob's presence. And I don't know how many of you have seen the movie Field of Dreams. But Bob's showing his sense of humor with me. I got a really clear message from him the other day. Finish it. And I'm going, finish what? And so I feel like I'm in this dilemma waiting, for more. But then a few days later, I got another message from Bob, and I constantly feel his presence now, and it was, I've had an incredible life, but my time is done. Use your time, because you don't know when it's over. And that's the gift you can give to me. And that's the message I've got from him. And the other gift I've got is Portia. To have families and friendships, one of the greatest things about it is the ability to pass that friendship, those shared values, that love of humanity and each other forward. Portia moved to London. My daughter just finished her master's there in human rights migration. And she sings in a choir with refugees, and she's very engaged in trying to make the world a better place. And those two amazing young women have become really, really close friends. And it's almost like that was part of the plan as well. And who could have predicted that? And my daughter's back in London, and I know she'd want me to say, Portia, that she's going to be there with you all the way along, and our home is your home, and Mary Jane, you as well. I may have missed something, but I just want to leave you with the thought that distance doesn't mean detachment, and we will stay close. Thank you very much.
So we're going to pause from our open mic for a moment and ask Wally Start to come up and share a few of his thoughts.
Bob the athlete. Damn it. I knew he was a great skier, but if I could have just convinced him he was a great golf player. Damn it. So I was Bob's partner in business for 17 years. But I knew him before that, actually, when Bill Stamp and I owned Cinepost. Bob was our lawyer. It's not that we needed a lawyer a lot. You know, we were generally got along with people, but for contract negotiations and stuff like that, we used Bob. Bob would never, ever give us an invoice, though. As years went by, and 13 years at Cinepost, I'd watch the mailman thinking that someday that envelope would arrive with that big, fat invoice in it, and we wouldn't be able to pay it, but none came. So Bob had that special place in his heart for the film industry, and we were the recipients of that kindness. We were his pro bono clients. When Bill and I sold Cinepost, I found myself out on my own, and Bob asked me what my plans were. And I had said, I wanted to produce long-form TV and films. He asked me if I wanted a partner. I'm sure my eyebrows shot up, and I said, you'd leave your busy practice and a six-figure job to join me? He said, yeah. He was looking for a change. I stuck out my hand and said, you're on, let's do it. We just set up shop, and we decided to kickstart our film careers by taking a trip to Mecca, the film Mecca, to LA. We decided we better spend some time lining up some appointments, so we had this great pitch. We said that we were Canadian producers and we had money to invest. We weren't lying, we had money to invest, and it was the tax credit. In no time, we had booked 2 days of wall-to-wall meetings. We were pumped. We were ready. We flew down to LA, walked into Enterprise and to rent a car. Bob said we need to leave an impression. So he picked out a lime green Mustang convertible with a big V6 in it. We hopped in, and off we went on the freeway. Top down, cruising, and for those that know Bob, we were passing cars like they were standing still. I was hanging on like there's no tomorrow. We didn't want to be late for our big meeting, when out of nowhere, this low-slung black Dodge Magnum car cut Bob off. Bob sped up and passed him. The black car sped up and passed us. And so we went back and forth till we got to gridlock, which happens in LA. We were side by side. Bob was leaning across me, yelling at the guy in the black car with the blacked out windows. And I was thinking, he's loading the Uzi right now. And I'm in between these two idiots. But he didn't roll down the window. The gridlock ended, and we drove out of there, and we got to our first meeting. But I kept a sharp lookout for any black cars. We made a lot of contacts in LA, and everybody seemed very friendly and encouraging, and I was pretty common in LA. You always got the first meeting, maybe not the second meeting or the third. Didn't matter, our TV careers had taken off. We started producing a doc series on Aboriginal fashion designers for APTN called Spirit Creations. We wanted a spectacular setting, or rather Bob had this vision, spectacular setting for the fashion, so we decided to take a crew and 5 models up to Nastoyik Falls, fishing camp north of La Ronge, called Jim's Camp. On the first day of shooting, Bob and I had kind of sussed out that the crew knew what they were doing, and everything was in control, so we kind of wandered off and down by the river, and it was like stifling hot. And he looked at me, and I looked at the river, and man, it looked pretty cool and refreshing, so we hadn't brought any trunks, so it didn't matter. We were one with nature. We stripped down, bare-assed, waded in. And I was swimming away, going for the other side of the shore, and looked around. I see Bob heading the other direction. In a flash, I knew what was up. I started going back towards the shore as fast as I could go. I made it to the shallows. I was running full out just when Bob got to the camera. I never did get the film. He threatened me often that he was going to circulate the photos, but I wasn't too concerned. Bob and I decided we should provide fish for supper. We wanted to feed the crew, feed the cast, feed the crew, so we headed out. It's a warm summer day, not a breeze, and we were floating on the current. He had brought along a couple of cigars, of course, and we were chomping on these cigars, and we were thinking, man, this film industry, it really fits our lifestyle well. But Spirit Creations wasn't drama, and Bob and I had set out to do more scripted entertainment. We finally got our big break, rather 2 big breaks. Bob landed a feature film called Shadow Puppets, starring James Marsden, Tony Todd, Jolene Blaylock, who I had no idea who these people were, but they were famous. And it was to be shot in LA, which was kind of funny because at that time, Arnold Schwarzenegger was governor of LA and was railing on about runaway productions that had gone on to Canada and shoot. Here Bob was in his backyard shooting a production from Canada. I was back home shooting a pilot for a half-hour TV show called Rabbit Fall with no money and no stars. Bob and I would phone each other and discuss our days. His problems were drastically different than mine. I had locations that didn't cost a dime. Andrew Gordon had donated his lighting truck and all the gear for about $1,000 for the week. I had a crew that would walk through burning buildings. That is, if I had a effects person that could light the building on fire. Bob's locations cost an arm and a leg. He had stars that needed pampering, and he had a crew that was only as loyal as the next paycheck. And I remember the one day he'd phoned me and he said he'd arrived on set to find the crew had mutinied and were demanding to be paid in cash or they weren't lifting a finger. And rumor had circulated that the production was broke. Bob didn't lose his cool, sped to the bank, pulled out the cash and paid the crew. They lost a couple hours of shooting, but they got their day in. Bob got the movie in the can, and we went into distribution. Rabbit Fall turned into a series, and we were riding high, working with the writers in the story room, in the trenches with the production crew, producing drama. That was what we wanted to do. But all things, good things come to an end when Space, the broadcaster, pulled out of Rabbit Fall, not because they didn't love the show and not because it wasn't getting a strong audience, but because they had reached their quota for Canadian programming, and they could happily buy cheaper US programming. But we weren't deterred, kind of fearless. We were a little bit younger back then. And we've become great friends with Rabbit Fall's showrunner, Peter Lauteran. And with his guidance and our crazy ideas, we crafted One Square Mile, 1 hour cop series set in Saskatoon. And we pitched the idea to Tom Hastings at CBC, head of development, and he loved it. He ordered the Bible, we wrote that, then he paid us to write the pilot, and we flew out to 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 meet with him and his team to discuss shooting it. That's when the floor dropped out of our dreams. The day before our big meeting, the Wall government had killed the Saskatchewan tax credit and essentially killed that 1 square mile. Probably the lowest point in our careers, we were in shock, we were angry, we felt betrayed by our province. It tested us, but not for long. As one door closes, the other one opened. Bob and I earlier had purchased a media group from Diane Adolph, where her husband Ken had passed away. And we set out to grow it, and while we continued to develop TV and feature films, we landed another doc series. It's like coming full circle. We started out on that. We landed another one with APTN, The Other Side, which the team is here, cast and crew was over there. And that was amazing. And while we were doing that, Bob produced Big Muddy, fantastic film, feature film directed by Jeff Monio, starring Nadia Litz, Justin Kelly, and David LaHaye. He also wrote the treatment for the Curia. This was his own show. It was a TV series set in the Vatican. It was genius, pure genius. And Tom Hastings, now at Bell TV, loved it. Bob led the way for us to purchase a second company in Calgary, and overnight we doubled our company. We had just received news from APTN that renewed The Other Side for season 5. So we're on to season 5, you guys. And then as Tom Charles, our friend and elder on the other side, said at the pipe ceremony yesterday, Bob reached the end of his path. Damn it. And the Creator called him to him. And now it's up to us to continue on his vision. Bob, I want to thank you for being such a great partner, a confidant, and a friend. I see your hand at work wherever I look, and I'll miss you. Miss you.
When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And in my hour of darkness, she is standing right in front of me, speaking words of wisdom. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. And when the broken-hearted people living in the world agree, there won't be an answer, let it be. For though they may be parted, there is still a chance that they will see. There will be an answer, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. There will be an answer, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, yeah, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, oh, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. When the night is cloudy, there is still a chance it shines on me. Shine until tomorrow, let it be. I wake up to the sound of music. Mother Mary comes to me. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. There won't be an answer, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, yeah, let it be. There won't be an answer, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, oh, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be.
So we're going to move on to our second and last open mic session. Just a reminder that we do have the video booth on the other side open for anybody that wants to jump in and share their memories. That's good. So Valerie Creighton, do you want to jump on stage? I don't know if I can compete with shadow puppets. Nobody can compete with shadow puppets.
Hello, everyone. I haven't had the honor of meeting Bob's family, but I will introduce myself later. So I'm currently serving as the CEO of the Canada Media Fund, and I took that job after I left Saskatchewan, where I ran Sask Film for many years. And I first met Bob. I had just started the job at Saskatoon, and I was kind of nervous, and we were all off to a big international television market in the south of France. And there was a big party on the opening night, and we went, and there was a dance, and there was this vision on the dance floor. This young guy, blonde hair, and it wasn't just I don't know if it was blue suede shoes, that's what stuck in my mind, and the white sport coat. It was the moves that had the entire south of France mesmerized by his elegance. And I was standing beside somebody, it might have been Wally or Tony, I can't remember, and I said, "Who the fuck is that guy?" And they said, "Well, that's Bob Crowe." And I said, "Who's Bob Crowe?" Well, my brother taught me to jive when I was 9. And then my dad jived with me regularly. So watching this guy, I didn't know he was from Adam. It was not an opportunity I was going to pass up. So that song was over. We were all standing on the side, and I went up to him and I said, "I don't know you, but I'm from Saskatchewan too. Will you dance with me?" And we had the best jive, and we jived many times over the years. Bob touched my life personally in a couple of ways. We worked together with this incredible Saskatchewan community over the years, and Wally and all you guys at Angel, don't worry, you'll find your way through it. He always did. You just have to keep following that lead. You'll be fine. Then we talked about politics, and he told me what he thought it really meant to run for the Liberal Party. That scared me off good. But my last encounter with Bob over the years was as we debated issues in politics and in media. And I just want you all to know what an extraordinary contribution he made at the national level. He was thoughtful, he listened, he brought great ideas and great debate that helped us all shape the industry we know in Canada today. In my last encounter with him, we were in England, and there was an event, and we were walking. We happened to leave the hotel at the same time after we were both having tea, and we walked across Hyde Park to the British Film Institute. And I was in a particularly difficult place in my life at that time. I have a horse ranch in Saskatchewan down in the southeast. And I was really worried that I'd put everything I had in there, and it was, in a real isolated rural place, and what would happen. And he gave me the most extraordinary advice. And he made me feel like I'd done the right thing, and that no matter what, it would all work out in the end, and it has. Now I'm down from 82 horses to 38, thanks to Bob Crowe. I lost my son recently in September, and I got the most wonderful note from Bob and Wally, and a friend of mine who worked with Bob is here today from Toronto, Sandra Cunningham, and she said she talked to Bob at the industry event in Toronto, and he said he was so distressed that he hadn't known about my son's death in time to get down to Stoughton. But like many who spoke today, they're with us. And if I learned anything, Mary Jane and Portia, grief never leaves, but love always stays. Thank you.
Reynolds?
Hi, my name is Reynolds Maston. I work for the Canadian Media Producers Association, of which Bob was a longtime board member. And I just wanted to share a couple of things about him in that role. The first was, I was smiling when you were talking about the robust discussion you had about Me Too, Portia, because Bob was the chair of our mentorship committee for many years, and he was absolutely relentless about our organization doing everything that it could to ensure that the mentees that we brought into the industry reflected our evolving and changing society. And what was most important to him was that we reach out to the next generation of Indigenous producer, which was so important to him. And so because of his relentlessness and because of his leadership, last year we announced a new program, the CMPA Diversity Mentorship Program. And its primary focus is on cultivating the next generation of Indigenous talent. And that is a lasting national legacy. I also just wanted to share an anecdote. This was from our last December board meeting at the CMPA. And we had invited a very senior executive to speak to our board, have a dialogue with our board. And this executive represents a company that my organization and a number of members of our organization, but not Bob's because he got along with everyone, had a very, very antagonistic relationship with. And this representative, when she arrived and gave her presentation, delivered what I'll call were, in her mind, some very hard truths for our board. And I could feel as she was talking the tension escalating in the room, because none of our board members, I think, agreed with what she was saying, but we're trying to be Canadian, be very polite and smile. But it was one of those scenarios where if you had lit a match, the whole room would have exploded, and I was getting a little bit panicky that it might. And then, at the moment of highest tension, Bob raised his hand. Bob had noticed that in her opening remarks, this guest had made a throwaway joke that if she were prime minister, she would do this, that, or the other thing. And so Bob said, I think you should run for prime minister. I think you'd be phenomenal. And if you agree to do it, I'll lead your campaign. And now, Madam Prime Minister, I would like to ask something of you. You're now at 24 Sussex Drive. What would you propose as Prime Minister of Canada to move our entire industry forward? And the dynamic changed like that. And all of a sudden, we were talking about solutions. It elevated the entire discussion. And what had been a very antagonistic relationship at that point, all of a sudden, you felt it shift. And there's a little postscript to this story, which I think Bob would have been particularly proud of. And that was, the evening of our December board meetings, we have an annual tradition of holding an industry party. And because of this antagonistic relationship, this executive had not attended our party in many years. But not only did she attend the party that night, she brought the big boss with her. And this was a party with roughly the same number of people in this room, and all anyone was talking about was how these two people were attending our industry party. It was a triumph. And I thought, that was pure Bob, and he would have particularly appreciated it because, as so many of you know, he long believed that some of the most profound and positive and wonderful relationships are born at a great party. And he organized many of them. And that is another lasting legacy that he's left. So thank you, Bob.
Perfect. We've got 2 open mic shares left. Brian, and then John, I'll ask you to close things out for us.
Hi. I have no idea what I'm going to say, except I just had to come up here and share my gratitude for knowing Bob and catch you all up to date. I'm his latest humanitarian project. A couple of years ago, MJ and Bob came and were Airbnb guests at my house in Palm Springs. By the afternoon, they were buying my house across town. And it was really sweet. Bob just heard me on the phone with my realtor talking about how I needed to lower the price of my house, and the story tells itself, but what a wonderful gift in my life. I'm gonna miss him terribly. It's not common that as a 58-year-old man, you meet a new best friend. We had a house project that brought us together, and after putting together a 22-and-a-half-hour IKEA entertainment center, we realized we were pretty good friends, and that we could make it through all the remodel. So we remodeled this home, and I've become family with MJ, and I'm just here to meet his daughter and son and family. And I knew he was a really special guy, but I had no idea, and I'm so glad I came and just got to see everybody and hear everybody's stories. And I knew the second I met both of them that they were extraordinary people that had a heart that was beyond most. And I don't know, maybe Bob was really, really cute. He passed around all my tweets. I'm the no complaints guy, if anybody knows. And I write about not complaining, and I have for 5 years. But he was really, really helpful and promoted me and really liked the idea. And I really don't have much else to say, except I just wanted to say I had to come from Palm Springs to be here. He's that special of a man, and he really uplifted my life in a really big way. So, thank you.
And last but not least, John Sparks.
Welcome to Bob's Club, a room full of family, friends, and colleagues, a great band, and a bar that serves a drink with your name on it. But here's the deal. Bob Crowe was no saint. I have had the privilege for the last 4 weeks of telling his children stories to curl their toes. One of my favorites, and the look on JP and Portia's face, and on his mother-in-law's face, and on his wife's face, was road trips. We spent a lot of time on the road together, the two of us, sometimes with Robin along to chaperone. But the most memorable was often moving horses. And there's a long curve just north of Saskatoon on the way to Batoche, the Warman Road curve. We'd clear town, we'd hit that curve. We would pound on Running on Empty, which the band played for us. And we'd pop a beer. It was against the law then, too. But for Bob and I, laws were flexible things. Even though he was a lawyer, he was my lawyer. My Dr. Gonzo, I was his Duke. It was a time. So I had to write this one down. And just as I urged Portia to read hers over and over before getting up, I'm going to read it because people didn't come here to see a 62-year-old guy cry. Almost 40 years ago, this spring, just before my 24th birthday, my wife Robin introduced me to her boss, Bo Woke. Bo was a performing artist, put on a lot of musicals, had an ad agency, but he decided he wanted to make movies. I was a journalist, and as part of my undergraduate studies had researched and written about the Canadian Film Development Corporation, and Bo figured that was good enough. Before I knew it, I was working for Granicus Films. So you have a performing artist and a journalist making movies. We didn't know shit. Not long after, I sat in on an interview with an almost 23-year-old prospect that Bo wanted to hire to handle the company's legal work. Bo asked the usual questions about education and background, and then to show that he understood the film business, he hit the guy with a zinger. Have you ever negotiated a film distribution deal? No, said the applicant, but I do a mean soft shoe. Bob was hired on the spot. And as they say, that was the beginning of a beautiful friendship. We never did make the movie, but we had a hell of a lot of fun trying. As you all know, Bob has negotiated countless film deals and distribution contracts in the intervening years. And you also know he was a pleasure to work with. He was a joy to party with. But above all else, he did a mean soft shoe. Bobby.
So we're just going to cue up the slideshow, and then we'll have a few closing words from the family.
Dream, 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 dream. Dream, dream, dream when I want you. In my arms when I want you. And all your charms whenever I want you. All I have to do is dream. Dream, dream, dream when I feel blue. In the night and I need you to hold me tight whenever I want you. All I have to do is dream. I can make you mine, taste your lips of wine, anytime, night or day. Only trouble is, gee whiz, I'm dreaming my life away. I need you so that I could die. I love you so, and that is why whenever I want you, all I have to do is dream. Dream, 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 dream. Dream, 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 dream. Dream, dream, dream.
Oh, duh. Suicida. Okay, suicida latex. Ciceliga. Ciceliga Cupid. Cupid? Cupid. Suicida latex. Liga? Liga, not Riga. Suicida latex. Ciceliga Frala. Really close. But let's right at the end. Suicida latex. Suicida latex. Liga Frala.
And if I had a boat, I'd go out on the ocean. And if I had a pony, I'd ride him on my boat. And we could all together go out on the ocean, set me up on my pony on my boat. Now if I were Roy Rogers, I'd sure enough be single. I couldn't bring myself to marry an old dame. Would it just be me and Trevor? We'd go riding through them movies, then we'd buy a boat and on the sea we'd sail. And if I had a boat, I'd go out on the ocean. And if I had a pony, I'd ride him on my boat. And we could all together go out on the ocean, set me up on my pony on my boat. Set me up on my pony on my boat.
This little piggy stayed on. This little piggy had roast beef. This little piggy had none. And this little piggy cried, wee, 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 all the way home.
Mary Jane suggested empty. That we boil the sausage beforehand. I think she was right.
It's okay. It's made by Molson Canadian.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's
That's just funny.
it's pretty good. It's bottled, but
Belgian Molson Canadian.
Loving can hurt. Loving can hurt sometimes, but it's the only thing that I know. When it gets hard, you know it can get hard sometimes. It is the only thing that makes us feel alive. We keep this love in a photograph. We make these memories for ourselves, where our eyes are never closing, our hearts are never broken, and time's forever frozen still. So you can keep me inside the pocket of your ripped jeans, holding me closer till our eyes meet, and you won't ever be alone. Wait for me to come home. Loving can heal. will get easier. Remember that with every piece of you. And it's the only thing we take with us when we die. We keep this love in this photograph. We make these memories for ourselves, where our eyes are never closing, hearts were never broken, time's forever frozen still. So you can keep me inside the pocket of your ripped jeans, holding me closer till our eyes meet. You won't ever be alone. And if you hurt me, that's okay, baby. Only words bleed inside these pages. You just hold me. I won't ever let you go. Wait for me to come home. 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 Oh, you can fit me inside the necklace you got when you were 16. Next to your heartbeat where I should be. Keep it deep within your soul. And if you hurt me, well, it's okay, baby. Only words bleed inside these pages. You just hold me. I won't ever let you go. When I'm away, I will remember how you kissed me under the lamppost back on 6th Street, hearing you whisper through the phone. Wait for me to come home. I'm starting to stray. If I can make it there, I'll make it anywhere. It's up to you, New York, New York.
Hello to everyone. My name is Mary Jane Handel. Most people know me as Bob Crowe's wife. We'd like to say some quick thank yous to everyone who's helped us the past few weeks. First, we'd like to thank the Sparks family for picking us up from rock bottom and keeping us going every day since then. Thank you, John and Robin. We'd like to thank everyone at Bamboo who helped make today's celebration happen. Thank you, Sheldon, Ross, Bruce, Glenn, and Heidi, who I haven't met yet. That's really wonderful, thank you. I'd like to thank Ada for taking this most difficult role of MC when she's also grieving, and for taking on much of the event planning. I want to thank Steve and Bree and all the Crowe relatives who helped us in Vancouver. I want to say a special thanks to my crew of girlfriends. I couldn't ask for a better group. They've just picked up and done everything that needs to be doing as well. Thank you to everyone who sent photos, especially Susan, who went above and beyond. Thanks, Sue. Thank you to everyone who's brought us food, sent flowers, and made donations in Bob's name. On that note, we're excited to announce we are planning to launch a mentorship program in his name to support an emerging Indigenous producer. There'll be more details to come soon, but in the meantime, if you'd like to donate, you can send us your contact information, or you can give us an e-transfer. Is that up there? Yeah. Okay, to there. And now in the words of Joni Mitchell, if you want me, I'm going to be at the bar. Thank you.